Welcome to mtbxp. My name is David and I'm here to give you an engineering point of view on bikes. And today we have a brand new frame to start my new build. So let's get started. So what we have here is a 2021 Commencal Meta HT. And the difference between this model and the previous year model is that they shortened this seat tube just a little bit by about 3/4 of an inch. They also lined this up, likely by some thinning out some of the metal and the chain stays based on what I've seen in other videos. And that's really about and they gave it a new color, which is maybe one of the reasons why most of us choose the frames that we choose. One of the most important things when choosing a brand new frame for any kind of build, or even a bike even, is to understand what you or even your customer is going to use with the bike, right? So it's a matter of where they're riding, what's the terrain that they're riding in, what their style of riding. All of that put together is probably the most important thing you need to define first before going about picking any frame or bike or any of the components that you're going to use. One thing that people like to look at first is the head tube angle. So the head tube angle for this particular bike is about 65 degrees. And what people don't consider, or I haven't really heard put together, is what the head tube angle is with what the fork length is spec'd out to be on the chart, right? So this 65-degree head tube angle is spec'd with a 555 millimeter fork, right? Axle to crown length. And so if you have a shorter fork, say with less travel, this head angle is going to be a bit steeper, right? And if you have a longer fork, this is going to be a more slack head angle. And with the head angle, you know, if you have a steeper head tube angle, it's going to allow the bike to turn tighter, turn easier. It just makes the bike more maneuverable, right? That's what they talk about when they say that the bike is more playful, it's more agile. Those are kind of the things to think about when you have a steep head tube angle. Now, as for a more slack head tube angle, what that's going to do is that's really going to push out the front wheel, giving you a longer wheelbase, right? So when you have a longer wheelbase, you're going to be more stable at speed just due to the long wheelbase itself. You're also going to have to put more input into turning than you would if the head tube was steeper, just because you're not right on top of it. Your weight is also not as much on the front wheel without a little bit more effort there. So again, this is head tube angle. Pay attention to what the fork length is supposed to be that's paired up with on the paper to get you that angle that they're advertising there, right? Moving back, we have a seat tube angle here of about 74 degrees. And again, seat tube angle is going to be, I would say, fairly dependent on the fork length that you're going to put on here, right? As you make the head tube angle more and more slack by a longer fork, that's also going to slacken the head tube angle. So but again, you can always compensate for that by moving the saddle forward or moving the saddle aft, right? Definitely something you can manipulate using the saddle there. Now, my previous bike had about a 15-inch seat tube length. One of my reasons why I'm looking for a brand new frame is that I have a 29er that I'm riding right now, Octane Prone 29, size small. I'm 5'7", and the standover height for that bike is killer for me. It rides well, it's just it can get uncomfortable when you get off the bike. So I opted for a frame that can do 27.5, right? So in terms of a frame that's 27.5, it's, I can have a slightly longer seat tube length here, but mainly if I look at the standover height here, and which is a spec that they rarely ever advertise. One way to kind of eyeball it, just based purely on imagery, is where this top tube meets the seat tube. And you can see that if this is a 17-inch seat tube angle or seat tube length, and this intersection is going to be about here, you can kind of roughly guess that this is going to be a higher standover than if it were to intersect lower and lower and lower. And again, just using the length and just eyeballing what you may see as the distances here. So for this particular model, they have the top tube welded to the seat tube, you know, about 4 inches or so down, which is why they probably added some extra material here as reinforcement, to kind of make sure that this doesn't get bent. You get a little bit more strength here, and that's probably being a running theme that you'll see in the bike industry, is that usually strength means more material, right? It's just easier to do it that way. I add more metal, I add more whatever it may be to make something stronger. I think that if you want to get more strength but not have the weight, you start really getting into the material sciences, right? This being an aluminum frame, which is again something that I was looking for to really meet that weight and cost balance. You can definitely go carbon and get lighter and have that strength, or you can even go titanium, again cutting that weight but still having that strength. Aluminum, again, it works well for me. A lot of the trails that I ride here in Southern California are mainly the green and blue trails. You know, I'm still starting out. There's lots of climbing here in Southern California, so that's kind of the style that I ride. That's why that hardtail kind of fit that bill. It allowed me to have that efficiency to climb up those hills, but it is also with the slightly or even aggressive geometry of this particular bike, I was going to be comfortable when I go down the hill, right? Especially when you're going down pretty quick. So that's kind of the balance that I have there. Again, it's going to be the balance of being able to climb, but being that there's a lot of characteristics of this particular frame that make it more on the agile side, you start trading off that performance for climbing there. Moving down, we have the bottom bracket here, which is thread bottom bracket. The bottom bracket is 68 millimeters or 68 BSA. So again, it's just something extremely common to find. And that's something else that you might want to consider, is how common are the components that you want to put on your bike. And that's extremely important, because that could be something that can completely blast your budget, or it could be just something that destroys your project because you can't find that particular part there. So again, just be very aware of the components that your particular frame is compatible with, right? So that's the bottom bracket there. Moving back just a little bit, you can see where the dropouts or for the bike here, they make a little notch right here, and what happens that you can see that this was an afterthought. Someone had made this a bit wider and did not consider what the chainring was doing until someone got yelled at. Probably a drawing had to change, you know, a few dollars were spent. So that's probably, again, one of those funny things that you'll notice on some of these frames here. We have a 432 millimeter chainstay, which is fairly short. What it really does, it moves your center of gravity, right? And a lot of the head tube angles, the seat tube angles, the chainstays, what that is really doing is just shifting your center of gravity. And where your center of gravity is on the bike is really going to determine how playful the bike is going to be, how stable it's going to be at speed, right? How well it turns, how easy you can get the front wheel up. That's all really dependent on your center of gravity. So with this being short, it shifts your center of gravity back, makes it really easy to get that front wheel up, right? To get over obstacles, to get over and features, whatever else you need to get that front, to do your wheelies, do your manuals. That's what makes it easy to do that, is because it's throwing your CG back far enough that, you know, one crank of the pedal just whips that front wheel right up. But it also means that it might suck climbing up a hill, and that you really have to just lean forward on that front tire in order to make sure that front tire stays on the ground as you're pedaling uphill. It comes with a chainstay guard, which doesn't really matter at the end of the day. One important thing to look at here is the axle standard, right? So this here can be really killer for someone who's not paying attention. This could be something that changes between tiers of frames. What I have here is 12 by 148 millimeters. That would be considered a boost axle. And my previous bike has a through axle that's 12 by 142, which is a non-boost axle. I believe there is a super boost axle, which is 12 by something in the 150 region. So again, pay attention what's here. It's really going to determine what type of hubs you can run, the wheel sizes that you can have. That's because the wider this is here, again, the wider tire that you can have. My previous bike, I can run a max of, I believe, 2.4 inches. This one's going to allow, spec'd out on paper, is going to spec out to go 27.5 by 2.8. So again, something I was looking for, and this boost axle is going to allow it there. Theory behind the boost axle was that they went with a thicker axle for more strength. Again, more material, more strength. That's the general concept that you see a lot, to stiffen up the axles, less flex, but going wider again allows you to just have those wider tires and more stability from there. Making sure that you have mounts for disc brakes, so that's fine. There's always something to check for anybody who's extremely brand new to the mountain bike world here. You have internal routing, which mainly cosmetic, doesn't really matter at the end of the day. And that's really it for the frame. Thank you for watching. Please comment below if you guys have any questions, and tune in again next time.